Hey guys, this is Alexis, Sophia Leather. All right, so in this video, we're gonna make a regular belt, okay? And for your convenience, this is gonna be a downloadable pattern. Link's gonna be in the description and in the pin first comments. I always have a hard time saying that. You can download this pattern. First thing you wanna do is establish the size, all right? Now you don't really wanna go by pants, whatever size they buy their pants. That's usually not accurate, I found, in my experience. I could be wrong, but in my experience, it's not really accurate. You need to measure it like this. From the tip of the buckle to the hole they use the most, and that's whatever current belt they have. Just take that measurement, and that is the measurement that we're gonna make the belt for. Now that measurement from the end of the buckle to the middle hole for this particular build is gonna be size 44. So from the end of the buckle to the middle hole is gonna be 44 inches. And then from there, you can make it cosmetically how you want. You can space the holes out. Typically, it's about an inch. You can go 4 inches above that and then 4 inches below that. So you have a good 9 inches of wiggle room. That's what I typically do, is the middle hole, 4 up, 4 down. Of course, you can make it a little more fine-tuned. You can fine-tune it and go every 3/4 of an inch, and then put 5 holes on each side or 3, whatever you want to do. But I typically put 4 holes front and back of the size that they give me. And then past that last hole, past the last hole, you'll see it in the print, is I call that a cosmetic piece. That cosmetic piece is a little tail, enough to go through your belt loop or whatever, your pant loop. Typically, anywhere from 3 to 4 inches past the last hole. Of course, that may vary depending how many holes you have past the middle hole, how many holes you have past the middle hole. That may vary, but I typically, for what I do, 4 holes up, down, and then 4 inches past that, and then you can make that tip whatever you want. I typically do an English point tip. You can do round tip. You can do a chisel tip. That's totally up to you, but this video is really intended for the crude dimensions, and then anything after that's a preference as far as the spacing of the holes, the belt end, how you want to do that, and really how you navigate the belt loop, how to make that, as well as the spacing between the oblong punch and the rivet holes and all that spacing. So we're gonna go over that. But first, let's talk about the tools that you need. All right, don't forget, this is a simple design. We're gonna be making a single layer belt. There's not gonna be any stitching involved. We'll get into that, that's more advanced. But we'll get into the leather and the hardware afterwards. But you need a wing divider. You can find these on Weaver Leather, a whole bunch of places. I have a video right here that tells you the tools and where I get them. You need an XL, yeah, an X-Acto, not XL, an X-Acto knife. You'll see that I'm not even gonna use this, but if you're gonna cut your straps with this, you can cut your straps with that. I typically cut my straps with this. I'll make a video, if not, if I haven't made it already, on how to process a whole side and get straps out of it. But I typically use this strap cutter to cut my straps. I'll go ahead and leave that here. The punch for the end, whatever you want. This is gonna be my English point at the end. Of course, you can use a round, and I actually use the round for my heavy duty belts. And the reason for it is a little bit of a lazy reason, is because it's easier to stitch around on the machine a round corner versus a pointed corner. So that's one of the reasons why I typically use this for belts that I'm gonna stitch. It just comes out cleaner. But you can use whatever punch you want, or you can freehand it with your knife. You need an oblong punch. An oblong punch. This is 1.25 inches. I'll go over the different size oblong punches. That basically means that it's 1.25 inches long, this oblong punch. Of course, you can do it by hand, by punching holes and then running, cutting it in between the holes. But oblong punch is the way to go. We'll go over the sizing of oblong punch when we assemble. Then you need a punch, a hole punch. This is a 5/32. And like I said before in my other videos, if you're only gonna buy one punch, I'd buy a 5/32. That's like the standard everything. And this is a different type of punch that I use for the back of the buckle assembly. Of course, you can get away with a straight cut, just cut it straight, or a round punch, but I found this to be a little neater. Of course, you can do that by hand. All right, now let's go over the hardware and material. All right, so you're gonna get your leather. This is Herman Oak English Bridle in Havana, 1.5 inches wide. You can make your belt 1.25 inches, but just keep in mind that you need to get the appropriate buckle for that. I'm using a buckle from Buckle Guy. This is a round, solid brass buckle. These are relatively expensive. You can use whatever buckle you want, but we'll talk about the buckle design and the difference between a standard buckle like this versus a heavy duty one like this. If you see the knuckle there, this one's a little more stout. So you need a bigger oblong with this one. We'll go over that when we build it, but you need a buckle. This is for the 1.5 inch strap, you buy a 1.5 inch buckle. I don't know if that makes any sense. Then when you fasten the belt, the buckle and all that, you can use whatever you want. You can use brass rivets, snaps, but I like using Chicago screws. The reason why I like using Chicago screws because they can undo this and change the buckle out. So you're not committed to the buckle using the Chicago screws. Although you run the risk of this unthreading and backing out. But if you use a drop of blue Loctite, not the red, get a thing of blue Loctite, you should be fine. The other thing you need is some thread. I have a video on what kind of thread I use. This is hand thread. This is Ritza Tiger thread. It doesn't matter the thickness, doesn't matter the color, because this is going to be hidden. This is how we're going to attach the belt loop to itself and make a loop. Okay, so this is just some leftover from a bag I made, and I just keep the leftover and I make a little piece like this. I don't know, maybe a foot long or something like that, just so I can stitch that loop together. Okay, so now let's get into making the buckle end. I wanted to show you, this is my heavy duty buckle and my heavy duty belt, and you notice that this buckle is really, really stout, the knuckle on it. So this oblong punch, I use a 1.5 inch, I use a 1.25 inch oblong punch, 1.25 inch. Only because it needs enough space for that knuckle to move in there, okay? Now, when we're building this, the spacing between the middle of that oblong to this first hole, Chicago screw, then to the next one, that's what makes this nice and tight. You don't want it too loose. I've seen guys make this where it's really, really loose, and that's because the spacing and the oblong choice, the size choice, they might have used a 1.5 inch oblong punch, and that made it too much. There was too much slack there, and the spacing between here and this first rivet was just too much. So you have a lot of sloppy slack. I don't like that. I like it to be a little tight. But because this is thinner, this is 2 layers of leather, and it's stitched, so it's a little more stout. I took my belt off, so now I gotta change. Hold on. So like I was saying, yeah, these are my gentleman suspenders. They're awesome. This is also a shameless plug. There's no reason why I need to put this in a video, but you can buy them and then I'll take your money and build them for you. Special, color, whatever you want. I like the trigger snaps versus the suspender clips because they hold up. Okay. So notice the difference. This is super thick and this is a little thinner, okay? So we don't need all that extra spacing when we make this belt. So the print is gonna be for a regular English bridle thin belt. It's about 9 ounces, just for the record. It's a 9 ounce thick belt. And I think that's a good average for just a regular solid belt. This is about 9 and a 5, so it's about 14 ounces, pretty stout. But just a regular casual belt, about 9 ounces, 8 to 9 ounces. You should be good with that. So we're gonna go ahead and work on the buckle end piece, the assembly. So take your pattern out. What am I doing? Take your pattern out. Am I here? Yeah. All right, so take your pattern out and we're gonna look at the buckle end, okay? So let's look at that, and we're gonna create that assembly. Bye. When you have your belt, your blank here, like this, because let's say this is a 44-inch belt, you wanna add about 15 inches, because really you're gonna need about 15 inches of material once you add the extra hole and the cosmetic tab at the end, plus the buckle assembly. That adds about 15 inches to be safe. So I need at least 60 inches to make this work. Now there's two ends here. One is closer to the neck, which is, I think, yeah, this one is closer to the neck, and this one is closer to the butt. This part here where the holes are at, I'm gonna make that the butt area. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're working on your stuff. So the neck area, I kind of want to be where the neck is at, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and take a large scale. This is a 6-foot scale, and we are going to simply take your pattern out. Let me move this, hold on. All right, so my battery is gonna die. On these wing dividers, this is a 1.5 inch strap, so I gotta set this to 3/4 inches, which should be already set, to find the middle of the strap. I'm gonna mark right here my first cut, okay? Now this is going to be this piece here, all right? That's where I'm going to cut off the back. That's basically gonna be this piece here. Now we gotta work on this hole, that hole, the middle of this oblong, this hole, and that hole. That's what we're doing now, okay? We're gonna mark all that. So from this first hole to the next hole, we're looking at 1/2 inch. So we're gonna go 1/2 inch. Now what I do is I go from the bottom up and from the top down. I don't know if you see that. If you go only from one way, it's gonna be wonky. So you wanna make sure, because this might not be exactly 1.5, and your wing dividers are probably not exactly 3/4 of an inch. So it's a safeguard against having to offset holes and patterns. So all I gotta do is shoot the middle of those two dots, and that'll give me the dead center. So just keep that in mind. Now from that dot, so we have the 0, then we have the 1/2 inch mark. Now what we wanna do, now we're gonna create the space on the bottom for the belt loop to slip under, all right? So now we're making this hole, and that is 1 1/4 inches. 1 1/4, so 1/2 plus 1 1/4 is 1 3/4, right? 1 3/4. Now we need space from that hole, which we just marked, to the middle of this oblong, not to the end there, but to the middle of this oblong, all right? And that, for this thinner belt, is going to be 1 inch. So 1 3/4 plus 1 inch is 2 3/4. Now, because that's gonna be the middle of the oblong, what I'm gonna do is scribe a little horizontal line in there. That's gonna indicate to me that that is the oblong section. You see how I marked that there? That's the oblong section, okay? And what we're gonna do there is take the oblong and ride the middle of that, and we should be good to go there. So now, we work backwards now. So from the end to here's 1/2 inch, from here to this hole is 1 1/4. From here to the oblong is, to the center of the oblong is 1 inch. Now we're gonna go backwards, because this needs to meet up. This is gonna flip under and needs to meet up on itself. So now we're just gonna work backwards. So now we're gonna go 1 inch from there, and that is going to be 3 3/4, right? And what we just created there is, that's the middle of the oblong, and then from the middle of the oblong to this section, to this rivet hole, that's going to be the 1 inch. Now we're gonna go from here to here, 1 1/4, so that when it folds up on itself, it's gonna match up. So now 3 3/4 plus 1 1/4 is 5. So now that should all match up, right? That should all match up. And what what was I saying? Oh yeah, that should all match up, and that's it. So let me punch this out, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, now you notice I have some scrap leather on here, and that's because this cutting mat got chewed up, and it'll tear up your leather on the bottom. So now all I'm gonna do here is on this very first one, right here, I'm gonna cut that off. It's got a fly in my face. Here. Now we're gonna go ahead and take the 5/32 punch like we talked about. And we are simply going to, I'm running out of space here, guys. Punch these holes with the exception of the oblong. We're not gonna do the oblong. I'll show you how to do the oblong. What I'm doing is I made 2 dots, so I'm putting this right over the 2 dots. This is what we have. See, the oblong is not done. Now, for this thinner belt, I'm gonna use a 1-inch oblong, not an 1 1/4 inch. I'm gonna use a 1-inch oblong. In other words, this is 1 inch long. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna look down. I'm gonna look down through there. See, there's an opening. I'm gonna look down through there to make sure that the middle, that I'm finding the middle of that. I'm gonna mark it so I can show you what I'm talking about. I'm not big on eyeballing it, but this is probably, you see how I just rolled the middle of that? Now what you can most certainly do is punch a hole here and there, and then take your X-Acto blade carefully and cut the rest out and make a hole. I've seen guys do that. I don't like the way that looks. I'm not that disciplined to do it, so I went ahead and bought this oblong punch because it looks cleaner. So now I'm going to finish this punch. Well, I'm going to finish this punch. I'm gonna put these back now because this is done. Now, if you notice, now that's completely done, okay? Now what we're gonna do is that we're gonna skive, because this is not super thick, we're gonna skive from the bottom of this oblong that way, just a little bit, so that when you fold it on itself like this, it won't get too bulky down on the bottom there. That's not a big deal, but it's just a small little touch that I like. So I'm gonna run this to the skiver a little bit. Hold on. My TV turned off. That's no bueno. I don't know why it turned off. Anyway, so like I said, from the bottom of that oblong to the end of the strap. And it's not going to take off much. In fact, it barely took anything off. I might need to take a little bit more off. There, that's better. Let me show you. See, not much. So now we're going to get into actually measuring. This guy wanted 44 inches. We got to measure, everybody has a different type buckle. You might have a different buckle, so we got to know the buckle size. This is why when you measure, when you ask somebody to send you a measurement, you want to make sure that you get it from the tip of whatever buckle they're using to the hole that they use. For this reason, you might have a buckle that's only 1.5 inches, or a buckle that's 1 inch versus a buckle that's 2 or 2.5. So this is why you want that measurement. So first you're going to measure the buckle, and it looks like you're going to gain about 2 inches, all right? And that is from the middle of this oblong punch. So it's gonna sit like this. So it's safe to say, maybe we'll call it 1.75 inches, right? That's probably a little safer, right? So I'm gonna leave this like this, all right? Now, I'm gonna run that way and mark 44 inches, okay? So this is gonna sit just like this. I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna mark 44 inches with the middle hole. So with that buckle end sitting, the oblong right at 1.75 inches, I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna mark 44 inches with my wing divider. Now that's the 0 hole. If you look at your print, you'll notice that it says 0, okay? Now it depends what size they want, this is gonna be different. Now from here, I'm gonna go 4 that way and 4 this way. This is where it's a preference. I'm gonna go 1 inch. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm gonna go 4 inches more past the last hole. So 48 plus 4 is 52. That is gonna be my English point. I'm now gonna bring it so he can tighten it another 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, like I said, the most important measurement here is the belt size. And then from there, like I said, I'm like a broken record. You can do what you want right here. I found this to be the nicest though. All right, so let's change the camera angle and I'll show you, we're gonna punch this out, okay? Let me punch this out. So you should have a total of 9 holes here if you're doing it exactly the same way I'm doing it. Now this is, I marked where I'm gonna use my end punch. This is where you can put whatever you want, a chisel tip, a round point, a round belt punch. I'm gonna use the English point. I like the way this looks. So what I'm gonna do is, if you notice where that dot is where the tip of that English point's at. If you had a different belt punch, then you start there, and here's the hit. All right, so we're left with this, okay? Now we gotta finish it. We'll talk about that here in a second. Let's do a little recap. From this middle hole, about 1.75 inches, because we adjusted, from there to that middle hole, 44 inches. All right, and that's gonna give him the right belt size. What we have to do now, bevel, burnish, assemble. And I'm gonna dye the edges. We'll go over that. If you guys wanna watch a video on how I dye my edges, it's a video right here on that. And I'm gonna basically do that for this, but you can basically call it done right now, bevel and burnish. And watch that video if you want more details on that. I'm gonna skip over it for this video, but I do wanna show you how to make the belt loop, okay? You have enough scrap, you can pull from here. I found that 1/2 inch wide is too narrow and 3/4 is too wide. You want 5/8, okay? So set your wing divider to about 5/8. You can most certainly do 1/2 inch. In fact, my utility belt, my heavy duty belt that's a 1/2 inch. I'm gonna go a little bit wider for this belt. That's just the way I designed it. And I think I have some more of this down there. I don't have to use this piece. Stand by. In fact, I do, and I believe this is 5/8. It is. So this is 5/8 wide, and I skived it on my skiver a little bit. All right, so it's skived down just a touch. Skived down to about 8 ounces, 7 to 8 ounces. You don't have to. It'll be a little bit tighter, but I found that skived it down to about 8 is good. So I'm gonna put this away, and then we're gonna measure and make this. So what I wanna do is find a good piece. I don't want like a piece that has some striations. I want a good, solid, nice piece, so I find it here. First thing I'm gonna do is come off with a little straight edge here. I'm gonna put a straight edge right here. In fact, that's already pretty good. Okay, now The measurement for this is like I said for 1.5 inch. You have to experiment if you use a belt that's 1.25 inches or a little wider or a little more narrow. But what I found that this piece should be 4.25 inches. Now this doesn't have to be exactly perfect because this is going to be on the bottom. So I'm looking for 4.25. That's right there. So 4.25. Let's put this down. Now what we want to do with this is punch 2 small holes. You can use an awl. You can use, I'm going to use this to punch just 2 holes on the side, but you can most certainly use just an awl and punch holes. In fact, I'll show you how to do that. This doesn't, like I said, have to be perfect. You can just come down here and I'm going to show you kind of evenly spaced out. You want something like that. And you're going to run your awl through it. Just push there. And then on the other side. I like using this beeswax, this block. Okay, so now you have 2 holes like that. I'm gonna go ahead, before we do anything, I have to bevel, burnish, and dye the edges on this, so let's do that. All right, so before we bevel and burnish, a quick word from my sponsor, and that is Nobody. I gotta go eat dinner with my kids. I'll be right back. All right, that was a delicious meal, but we gotta move on here. Now what I'm gonna do before I bevel, I'm gonna bevel and burnish everything, but before I bevel, I'm gonna paste this back. When I skived this, it made it a little rough back here. It's a little rough. So what I'm gonna do is take a little bit of water, like this. This is glycerin saddle soap. I'll show you what I use. You can definitely use just water if you like. And I'm gonna rub a little bit. And I'm simply gonna burnish the fibers down. It's gonna make this really nice and smooth to the touch. So now that's burnished down. Same thing back here in this little flap. You probably don't need to do this part because it's gonna be hidden, but I'm right here. Okay, now I'm gonna take my beveler, and this is a number 1. You can watch my tools video. This is a number 1 Weaver beveler. I'm gonna go ahead and take this red jeweler's rouge, put on a scrap piece, and then sharpen my tool just a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to bevel the bottom of that joker. And then the top. I'm gonna get this out of the way because now we're going to burnish this. Take some water. Like I said, watch that video, how I do this. And this is a part that the belt goes through, so you want to make sure this is real nice and smooth. Some canvas cloth. And I'm going to dye the edges. Some scrap leather. This is an acrylic. Like I said, watch that video, and I have where you can buy all this, links and everything. So it's just Phoebing's Pearl Oil dye in here, dark brown. And I'm just gonna hit these edges up, maybe a couple of passes. And since this is dark brown, I'm not worried about it if it goes on the top of the leather a little bit, but I'm gonna be careful anyway. And while this is drying, I'll work on the main piece and do the same thing. And we have to do another burnish once that dries. So I'm gonna do that on the main strap. I'm gonna change the camera angle for you though. I don't go around the tip here because when I punch it, it makes a little bevel there. So I'm just gonna go on the long end. I'm gonna flip it over. Now on the point, on the English point over here, I will bevel the bottom of this. I'm gonna go ahead and cheat and use this guy over here. I'm gonna bevel just a little bit. Just a little bit because I still gotta, I'm just gonna run this through real quick because I still have to dye the edges. Just to take the fibers down a little bit so that the brush on that dye is not fighting the little furries. And then we'll do a nice burnish. It's just to knock down some of those fibers so that that brush could run along the edge a lot cleaner. Alrighty. I want to make sure I get that line where I beveled. It's like the most important part. You don't want to see that natural color poking through the top. And then we'll ride along the middle of this here in a second. While this is drying, we'll work on the belt loop. Now, if you notice, I got the top. I was focusing on the top, but you see the bottom is not done. So we're gonna work on that right now. And basically, if you just go down the middle, it'll cover that bottom. So the middle is gonna get hit twice, and as you're doing the middle, it'll get some of that bottom for you. So I'm not even favoring the bottom right now. I'm just going down flat across the middle, and it's covering the bottom. And when you burnish this, it gets a little bit darker. Once this is done, we'll let this sit and we'll work on burnishing the belt loop. And that's it. Let me give it one quick glance. Yep. Let's put this away, and then we're gonna bevel and burnish that little belt loop. We already beveled it, we're just gonna burnish it real quick. I like that. I use a little acrylic resin to put on the edges. Just a little touch. I'm gonna show you what that looks like here in a second. Just gonna put a little bit of this on the edge. All right, let that dry, and we can show you how to stitch that together while this is drying. Hold up. Actually, while that's drying, I'm gonna go ahead and start working on burnishing this belt. You don't have to sit here and watch me do this. A little water, a little glycerin. I'm gonna go ahead and use a regular burnisher. Go ahead and put a little bit of beeswax. All right, this is 50% beeswax, 50% paraffin wax. I'm gonna melt a little bit, and I'm just gonna put it along the edge here. because I'm gonna go ahead now. This is on the edge, a little bit of wax. I'm gonna take my handy dandy canvas and I am gonna go to town. Any spots that you don't like, you can go ahead and hit it up again. But I'm gonna do the other side and then put the coat on the edges, the feebings, and then we'll continue with stitching this up. I bevel and burnish the main strap and I put the coat on there on the edge, if you can see it. All right, so what you're gonna do is weave it through the bottom 2 holes. Wow, of course I didn't go all the way through. Well, that's just fun, isn't it? All right, I'll show you what that looks like. It looks like this. All right, you're gonna weave it through the bottom 2 holes. And then here is where you can kind of manipulate it a little bit and get it flat. Then you take, basically doing a baseball stitch. This one down here and put it through this hole on top. Make sure you come out that way. It's gonna look like that. Then this next one over, like a baseball stitch. And this is where you're left with. Cinch it down nice and tight. And you're gonna go underneath. So this one, you're gonna go underneath this hole. This might be overkill, but this is what I do. Through. Oops. Right. And then this one, you're gonna go through the opposite hole on the same side. So you just went through the bottom, okay? Now you're coming back out the top. Tighten it up again. And now they're at the top. And you're gonna do one more. From the top across, that way. This is how you make it super tight. And then the opposite one across. And then cinch it pretty tight, and this is what you're left with, okay? And then down here, you just do a granny knot. Wow, I made this a little bit too short. Granny 1, I do a couple of grannies. And then another granny. Just an overhand knot, a couple of overhand knots. And then you're gonna snip as close as you can. Leave it like an 1/8 inch. And you're gonna burn this a little bit, not too much. You wanna melt the fibers like that, and then with your thumb, mash it down, and you're left with a melted polyester knot right there. And that ain't going anywhere, okay? That is not going anywhere. And there's your loop. Ladies and gentlemen, all we have to do now is assemble, and that's it. The good thing about these Chicago screws from Weaver is they have you can either use a flathead or Torx 15. All right, and you can get this at Lowe's or Home Depot. Torx 15. Weave your buckle through. You gotta make that whistling sound. And first Chicago screw goes in the first hole. And then this comes down on itself. I'll show you what this looks like. I'm gonna just start the screw and not mash it down, just get it started. You need a little wiggle room to put the belt keep. But this is what it looks like right now. And of course, you're gonna take your belt keep and you're gonna weave it from the end all the way, like so. Shove it in between. And then you're gonna take this Chicago screw and you're gonna put it, actually I should have put the screw in, that was silly. I'm gonna put the screw in. I always put the screws in first. And then we can start screwing this bad boy down. And then now you could really hammer it home. Same thing on this one. And there you have it. Okay. Now, if you noticed, there's not that much wiggle room here. You see that? Not that much. And that is because the spacing between the middle of this oblong punch and that first Chicago screw. These are always going to be 1.25 inches apart. And I used a 1-inch oblong punch because this belt buckle, the knuckle on this thing was not too bulky. So I like it tight. I don't like it loose like that. Like loose like a lot of guys make it. I forgot, I gotta put my maker's mark on here. Let me do that real quick. Make sure it's nice and straight. Maker's mark. There she goes. All right, we're gonna finish this off with a little bit of my secret sauce. I sell this, check out the website under, what happened, Maddie? No, just now, turn it on. Oh. I have this for sale on the website. If it's not on there now, it's because I'm still waiting for some more material. But you can buy 2-ounce can of my secret sauce. It's all natural. It's basically beeswax and neatsfoot oil, all right? So take a little bit and we're gonna condition the leather. And like I said, this is English bridal, so it already has natural tallows and wax, but I like to put a nice little finish coat on there and buff it down. So it looks nice and shiny and it has a little bit of that beeswax protection on top. I'm gonna hit the bottom up again. You can almost do it like a light burnish on the back with just this rag. And this is just a, what kind of rag is this? I forgot what you call it. A microfiber rag, that's what it is. You can kind of get the fibers down a little bit more. Kind of gives that final touch. However, you do end up with some of my sauce in the holes here, but no big deal. All right, let's take a look at it. There it is. I'm thumbnailing right now. So you can see that fit real quick. That fit goes in there real nice and easy. Not hard, but still nice and tight. It's not loose, okay? Not too loose, not too tight. I'm gonna measure real quick and we'll see that indeed the middle hole is 44 inches when it's all said and done. Just take my word for it, it's 44 inches right here from the buckle to the end. I hope this video was helpful to you guys. These are for sale on my website, sofialeather.com, link in the description. The pattern is there in the description as well on making something like this. Hope you guys found this useful. God bless you. Thank you very much for watching and supporting the channel. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. I'm gonna do some more thumbnails.